What's going on, everybody? This is Alex once again with another episode of the EOT News Flash. This is it. This is the last installment of our Theros Beyond Death limited set review, and my voice has lasted. Yes, it was a little shaky there earlier, but we're okay. We're okay. If you haven't already, please go and check out the rest of the videos we've done so far. We've done the white, the blue, the black, the red, and the green cards. And all that's left are the multicolored artifacts and lands, which I like to lump up in one nice little package because there aren't that many of them individually, and those short videos would be really kind of lame, actually. So here we are. Now, a quick disclosure about these videos. I've said it a couple times now already, but I think it bears repeating. When you're doing a set review and you're doing sort of a numeric grading on things, we do it on a 1 to 4 scale, obviously. There's going to be not a lot of difference between certain cards. There's lots of 2s, a handful of 1s, a handful of 3s, and a very, very few select 4s. And that's okay, because what's behind those numbers is context. And for your more experienced Magic player, I think that context is already understood, that not all 2s are created equal, not all 3s are created equal. But I can certainly see, newer, less experienced Magic players seeing, 2 3s and going, oh, well, they're equal, so no matter which one I play will be good for my deck. And that just really isn't the case here. So, for all limited sets, Wizards doesn't make bad cards. Magic sets are designed to be played limited, for limited especially. And so all cards should be playable in some capacity, no matter how niche their application is. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. So, beyond the 2 or the 3 or whatever I give the card, there's going to be some context that has to be applied to it. And that's where you really want to dig into and understand that to make sure that you're not jamming, just any old 3 into any old deck, because the 2 just might not add up all that well. So that aside, let's dig into our breakdown of our ratings. 1s are the cards that we should never ever be playing except in extraordinarily rare circumstances. They are bottom of the barrel draft chaff, your 23rd and 24th playables. Not worth the sleeve space, honestly. The 2s are going to be your more generic filler, more common creatures and spells that just kind of do your average effects. 3s are the more premium creatures, the gold signpost uncommons. Nice little segue there. More premium removal, and the 4s are the absolute bombs of the format, your first pick in draft, the best card in your seal pool that pulls you into a color. Frankly, they are just the cards that win you games. So, with all that out of the way, we also have 2 additional categories. We have S for sideboard, which are cards that you'll bring in if your opponent presents you with a threat or a card that you might not typically be able to deal with on your own. And Bs are the cards that need to be built around, a card that it can certainly function fine on its own, but once it is in a more specific build of a limited deck, its real power begins to shine. So let's dig in, everybody. This is the Multicolored Artifact and Lands, and this is Theros Beyond Death Limited Set Review. First up, Acolyte of Affliction. I do adore alliteration. 2 black-green creature human cleric at uncommon 2/3. Whenever it enters battlefield, you put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you may return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Very nice. Black-green certainly always has this element of recursion to it, and this one is no different here, whether it's fueling escape and then getting back a key permanent that you've already lost, maybe one of your key creatures. Sadly, it's not any card, so we're not full on Eternal Witness mode here, but honestly, what is? This card, however, is quite powerful. I do like it a lot. It's a solid 2.5 for me. I really am excited to see what this Graveyard Escape deck looks like. Next up, we've got Allure of the Unknown, and it's going to stay unknown because I will never know what it's like to play this card. 3 black-red sorcery at rare. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library. An opponent exiles a non-land card from among them, then you put the rest into your hand. That opponent may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Yeah, no. Absolutely not. No. Just absolutely not am I going to give my opponent the best card in that 6. I do not care. I absolutely 100% will never ever cast this, and nor should you. Flat 0, pass. That's better. Ashiok. Nightmare Muse. 3 blue-black legendary planeswalker Ashiok mythic rare, 5 starting loyalty, +1 creates a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature token with whenever this creature attacks or blocks, each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Each opponent, hello EDH, -3 returns a target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player exiles a card from their hand. Juicy. And for -7, you may cast up to 3 face-up cards from your opponent's own from exile without paying their mana cost. Ashiok is nasty here. Those creatures are excellent on both offense and defense. With, I believe it is an aspect of Lamprey, the enchantment aura that makes opponents discard cards. The -3 becomes a very real threat to, especially if you curve that into this, to make them discard, then start losing cards out of their hand is absolutely insane. And that exile, the -7, that's actually relevant here. That's only 2 activations to get to ultimate range here. And the fact that Ashiok protects herself so well with those 2/3s makes it a premium threat. Obviously, this is an easy slam dunk first pick and a very, powerful card to build around. Ashiok is a slam dunk for probably one of the best cards in the set, full stop. Next up, we have Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. Atris obviously is also a character in the expanded universe for Star Wars, but that's a different story. 2 blue-black legendary creature, human advisor, 3/2 with menace. Whenever it enters battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. I'm reminded of that Foreigner song, Head Games, is it? Yeah, this is a pretty cool card here. I do like this quite a bit. Menace is obviously a very powerful combat ability on here, and just the ability to have this mind game of, well, my opponent did 2 face-up cards and 1 face-down card. Is the two pile of 2 better than the other? There's a really cool dynamic going on here. And especially if you're in black, you most likely will have a way to get some of those cards back out of your graveyard. There's just a lot of really cool counterplay to this card that I think is going to go deeper than just your average turn creature sideways and attack. Your opponent really has to think on a different axis to you and see if you can kind of undo their own little, thought experiment, if you will. So Atris right here is a solid 3 for me. A little bit weak on the body, but still very powerful. Bronze-Hide Lion is next. Green and a white gets you a creature cat at rare 3/3. You can pay green and a white to give it indestructible till the end of turn. And when it dies, it does something truly bizarre, and I'm pretty sure no other card has ever done this. You return it to the battlefield. It's an aura enchantment with enchant creature you control, and you can pay green and a white. Enchanted creature gains indestructible till the end of turn, and it loses all other abilities. This thing's pretty wild, I have to admit. I quite like this card. I'm glad that Fleece's Line's not coming back. That card was a complete disaster to play against, and I think this one is just really cool here as well. Bronze-Hide Lion, this is a solid 3. Any green-white deck, any Constellation deck can make good use of this, and just for the bonkers way that card interacts when it dies is pretty cool as well. Moving on to our brand new Planeswalker. We have Calyx, Destiny's Hand, who I believe is a creation of Klothos, the red-green god we'll get to here in a minute. 2 green-white legendary Planeswalker Calyx, mythic rare, 4 starting loyalty, +1 lets you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them, put that card into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. -3 exiles target creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you do control leaves the battlefield. And -7 returns all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that +1 is a little bit screwy, if you ask me. Not putting them into the graveyard to not, directly play with the -7 is a bit strange, but it's not really in the color identity of green and white to get things into the graveyard. So give it a pass there. I do quite like, the ability to turn any of your enchantments into an Oblivion Ring. And of course, if the game does go long, that -7 will get you a ton of value out of your graveyard. It's just a shame that the +1 it has a high potential to miss if you really haven't gone all in on an enchantment deck. So Calyx here, definitely a strong Planeswalker, solid 3, but really has a heavy build around me component just because it doesn't function without that. But in terms of Planeswalker design goes, I'd rather a more narrow-minded Planeswalker, kind of like a Tezzeret Agent of Bolas, than something that's just generically good, can defend itself, draw cards, at a game-winning ultimate. So definitely a cool card here. Very much like this one. Next up, we've got Calyx, Crafter of Wonders. 1 blue-red legendary creature, Merfolk Artificer at rare. It's a 2/4. Tap it to add 2 generic colorless mana to your mana pool. Spend this only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. And equipped creatures you control have flying and haste. As you will soon see, this is a 3-mana 2/4 legendary creature with no text for limited. This does absolutely nothing, unfortunately. This isn't a first pick. This isn't a build around card for sealed. If you're in blue-red, maybe. No. Don't play this card. This is a one. Let's just call it this. If you are going heavy equipment, which you should not, this is a mega B. But it's a 1. Don't play Calyx here. EDH kids, go nuts. Next up, we've got Devourer of Memory. A blue and a black gets you a creature nightmare, uncommon 2/1. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library, Devourer of Memory gets +1/+1 till the end of turn and cannot be blocked. And you can activate his ability by paying 1, a blue and a black, and putting the top card of your library into your graveyard. Me gusta mucho. I love this thing. Blue black, traditionally the colors of being unblockable, these sort of slippery creatures that are just impossible to deal with. I can't even honestly tell what the hell I'm looking at here. This thing's just creepy and I love it. I'll be happy to put things in my graveyard, to pay for those escape costs and other such things. This is a really cool card here. This is a solid 2.5 for me. Very, very cool card. I love it a lot. Next up, we've got Dream Trawler. 2 white, blue, creature sphinx, rare, 3/5, flying lifelink. Whenever you draw a card, it gets +1/+0 till the end of turn. Whenever it attacks, you draw a card, and you discard a card, and Dream Trawler gains hexproof until end of turn, and you tap it. So an important note here is that even after it's tapped, you can still do that. I'm pretty sure on that one because it's not all part of the text there. The punctuation breaks that up. So if you tap it, if it's already tapped and you discard it to cast hexproof on it in response to removal spells, it still works. Definitely get that one checked by a judge, but I'm 99% sure on that one. Beyond that, this card is absolutely ridiculous. The hardest thing about this is the fact that it's double white, double blue, but if you're in those colors, you should have no problem casting this thing on curve. And at that point, you just kind of take the game over because how do you kill this thing? You don't. You kill with it, actually. Solid 3.5 for me. This is a card that I absolutely adore. This is my kind of Magic card. This is flat out. Love this thing. Next up, we have Enigmatic Incarnation, 2 green-blue enchantment rare. Now, hold on. At the beginning of your instep, you may sacrifice another enchantment. If you do, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1, plus the sacrifice enchantment's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield and shuffle your library. It's Enchantment Pod. That's pretty nutty, honestly. When I first started looking at this, I was thinking about only non-creature enchantments, but then you sort to open up your mind a bit more and realize that there are enchantment creatures that this qualifies for as well. obviously this is nowhere remotely as broken as Birthing Pod was, or something like Evolutionary Leap or something like that. This is a pretty fair balanced card and not a very good one at that. This is a heavy build around card just because you have to have enough cards at each converted mana cost to make sure that the chain actually works. And on top of that, most of them have to be enchantments to make sure that the chain continues going. Build around me, and I really would advise against doing that unless you're just trying to goof around at a draft. Not playing this one. Build around 0. Next up, we have Eutropia, the twice favored 1 green blue legendary creature human wizard at uncommon 2/2 with Constellation that puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature whenever Constellation is triggered, and that creature gains flying until the end of turn. Obviously, blue-green is the heavy Constellation color combination here, so the Omens, any of the other creatures, especially ones that kind of want to bounce back and forth to replay themselves, retrigger Constellation, Eutropia is going to be a super important part of that deck. And, just the ability to give, your creatures just massive power in the long run, make them flying, give the evasion. This card is really powerful here. Definitely leaning towards a 3 for this one, just because of the tempo-esque nature of blue in this format and just the heavy Constellation aspect of green as well. Really nice color combination here. Very powerful. Solid 3 for me. Next up, we've got Gallia of the Endless Dance. Girl just wants to party, guys. She just wants to party. Red and a green legendary creature satyr, rare, 2/2 haste. Other satyrs you control get +1/+1 and have haste. And whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. And if you do, draw 2 cards. There is no success like excess. Now, I do not know off the top of my head how many satyrs are actually in this set. I apologize. Obviously we can play the 1-mana sorcerer that makes satyrs, and then there are 2/2s with haste. That's pretty cool, I guess. But I'm not really sure that I'm going to be, trying to draft like Satyr Tribal with this thing. I'm just all in on a red-green aggro deck. Maybe there are some Satyrs, but of course I do want to have that attack clause on there. The random discard is pretty uncomfortable, but I think the advantage you get from it will be quite powerful, especially if you're low to the ground. You just want to draw threats, and the occasional discard of something you might have wanted to play, probably easily negated. So Gallia here, solidly in that 2 range, just because she needs a lot going on to make her really powerful. This is another one of those ones where I just say, Commander kids, go nuts. Next up, I'm pretty sure that Wizards let a Hearthstone card sneak into the set somehow, because we've got Haktos, the Unscarred, red, white, legendary creature, human warrior, at rare, 6/1, that attacks each combat if able, and as Haktos enters the battlefield, choose 2, 3, or 4 at random. Haktos has protection from each converted mana cost other than the chosen number. So basically, whoever came up with this is just, I don't even know. So basically, it comes into play, let's say that you choose 2 at random. All of a sudden, it cannot be touched by anything that costs 1 mana, 3 mana, to infinity. This only 2s can hurt it. It's kind of like, it's Achilles here is what we're looking at, essentially. Fortunately, it doesn't have trample, it doesn't have first strike or anything like that. So, and most limited decks should have a decent number of each of those other converted mana costs. So this isn't going to be just the end-all, be-all if they resolve it against you. You can deal with this, I think. That being said, this is a pretty powerful card regardless. This is a solid 2 for me. 2.5 if we're being fair, just because of this, though, how narrow it becomes to even touch this thing. The only downside is that double red, double white casting cost, but if you are an aggressive Boros deck, you shouldn't have too hard a time casting this on curve, and hopefully they don't have your number. So, moving on. We have Hero of the Nyxborn, 1 red-white enchantment creature, human soldier, uncommon, 2/2, When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. And what do you think this thing does when you target it? Yeah. Other creatures you control get +1/+1/+0 till the end of turn. This is your heroic uncommon that doesn't actually have heroic. It's just as good as all the other ones, except the the little 1/1 in white. So this thing's pretty solid here. I like the fact that it actually brings a friend along. And yeah, this is a solid 2.5 for me. This is going to be a great first pick if you want to go aggressive, want to play some combat tricks, and just beat your opponent down as fast as possible. Again, why did they put heroic in this set? I don't get it. There's like... Okay, there's only 5 cards, so that's kind of a problem. But still, just put it in there. Next up, we've got our next god, Calyx, God of Destiny. Apparently, she's been locked in the underworld somewhere, and as soon as Xenagos went away, she came back, and she's angry about Elspeth escaping from the underworld. So here we are. 1 red-green, legendary enchantment creature god, mythic rare, 4/5, indestructible, requires 7 devotion to red and green to become a creature any less, and she is not. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a land card, add red or green mana to your mana pool. Otherwise, you gain 2 life, and Calyx deals 2 damage to each opponent. So for the majority of your games of Limited with Calyx in play, you're going to be exiling non-land cards to hit that damage. I don't see, really too often a ton of lands going to the graveyard unless you're playing against a black-green deck that has a very heavy escape component and is actively fueling the graveyard with their lands. So I see this as just, a little bit of life gain, a little bit of shock here and there. Pretty good stuff here. The fact that it can't go to a creature is kind of a downside, but still a pretty powerful card here. I'm going to give Calyx a 3 here. A very strange design, but one that I appreciate. And next up, we've got our first of our Elder Giants. I was so hyped when I saw this for the first time. We have Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. You have to imagine that they have like one of those big, maybe like a magnet board or something at Wizards, and they just have, balls that have words on them, and they just kind of like start chucking them at this wall, and whatever sticks, whatever crazy combination of words they get, that's what they name their legendaries, because that's what this feels like, but it's amazing. So it is a black-red legendary creature, Elder Giant, mythic rare. That's 2 CMC, black-red. It's a 6/6. Sure, this has a downside. Well, not really. When Kroxa enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it escaped. So this does something, obviously, when it comes to the battlefield. As it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. Yikes. And of course the escape is black, black, red, red. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. This is pretty absurd. Red removal will not finish this off. You've got to go black or blue to like Ichthyomorphosis on this thing. Otherwise, it's just a disaster for you. Playing with this just has to be an absolute riot, though. I love this design on here. Play it on turn 2. Play it on turn whatever when you're able to fire off the escape and then just go to town. Without any kind of evasion, it's not as good as it could be, although frankly it doesn't need it. The fact that it's just constantly threatening your opponent's hand is such a powerful effect, and eventually they're going to have to get to the point where they don't have lands to discard, and they're going to have to start discarding their actual cards, and they're going to lose that life. And just Kroxa is insane here. The only downside is it's a pretty big hoop to jump through. So Kroxa lands somewhere around the 2.53 range. Insanely powerful, though. Insanely powerful. And next up, we've got Kunoros, Hound of Athreos. 1 black-white for a 3/3 legendary creature hound. Rare. Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast spells from graveyards. Okay, Wizards. This is basically a Grafdigger's Cage on a stick, and really falls into that, archetype of design where they just kind of throw as many keywords on it as possible, kind of like Questing Beast. Not huge on that design philosophy here, but at least it's kind of on flavor, and 3 abilities for 3 heads, sure. Obviously, you want to play this in sort of like a black-white aggressive deck. Just, constantly attacking with this thing is going to get your opponent dead very quickly, and obviously is a great way to hose out all of those escape cards. Cool. Yeah, solid 3 though. Solid 3. Next up, we've got one of my favorite uncommons in this set, Mischievous Chimera. A red and a blue gets you an enchantment creature Chimera at uncommon 2/2 that flies. And whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you scry 1. Talk about value engine here, and I've already gushed enough on all of the blue and red cards that I just want to cast on my opponent's instep, and this is just the bread and the glue that holds the whole thing together, the peanut butter and jelly that holds the sandwich together, the nail that holds the wall together, whatever. Just all bad metaphors aside, this card is absolutely awesome. Bring it down early, start casting those spells, and, racking up all the different value, whether it's drawing extra cards, looting extra cards, everything that this deck can do. Just insane. This is a solid 2.5 for me. Very, very cool card. And I'm already having flashbacks again. Polukranos is back as Polukranos Unchained. 2 black-green legendary creatures, Zombie Hydra, Mythic Rare, 0/0, enters the battlefield with 6+1/+1 counters on it, and it escapes with 12. Jesus. If damage would be dealt to Polukranos while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters. You can pay 1, a black and a green, and have it fight another creature, target creature, and you can escape it for 4 black, green, and exile 6 cards from your graveyard. Wow. Polukranos is an absolute monster. No 2 ways about it. You won't be able to escape this, more than, I would say upwards of once or twice in a dedicated black-green escape deck, but I don't think it's going to take that much for you to win the game with Polukranos here. If you're backing this up with the green creatures that grant trample, any bit of removal, Polukranos just ends games by himself. Solid 3.5, possibly even a 4. Definitely up there with Ashiok in terms of probably the best card in the set for limited. Absolutely insane. Next up, we've got Rise to Glory. Oh, Daxos is back. Good for him. 3 black-whites for a sorcery at uncommon. You may choose 1 or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your battlefield, or return target aura card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, slice and dice, whatever you need back, you get it back. So, this is cool that we actually get a full-on just reanimation effect in this set. Obviously, black and white, there's not really a whole lot in either color that you want to be pulling back, especially in white, but more so black. So this might be something that ends up getting splashed in a black-green escape deck instead, if you do have things like the Green Omen or the Caryatid. Just, be a little careful with how you're building your mana base, obviously. More often than not, it's going to be all about getting that creature back, but if you do have a better aura, that you can go along with it, I can certainly see that being a viable option there as well. This is a solid 2 for me. This is not going to be, a constant effect you're pulling off, but is a pretty powerful one at that. Solid 2. Next up, we have got what I swore was a screenshot from Wonder Woman. When the card was first spoiled, the art was a little grainy, the card was grainy. I thought someone photoshopped Gal Gadot on this card. Not that I'm complaining about that, just the facts. This is Siona, Captain of the Pyleas. 1 green-white legendary creature, human soldier, uncommon 2/2. When she enters battlefield, look at the top 7 cards. Girls, dig through timing here. Of your library, and you may reveal an aura card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. I do believe there's some kind of infinite combo with this in EDH. I'm just blanking on the name of the aura. But for any green-white deck that has, a lot of focus on all of the auras that you can play in those colors, Siona is going to absolutely be a monster in that deck. To go and pull those out 7 cards deep. I mean, let's do the math here. Opening 7, 33 left. Turn 3, 30 left. 7 cards. You're digging through almost a third of what's left of your deck. If you don't find something in there, I don't know what to tell you, honestly. And, in the random chance that you do miss, slapping an aura on a creature you control and actually getting an extra creature out of it, definitely powerful as well. Siona is a 2.5, very, very cool card. Next up, we have the Slaughter Priest of Mogis. Black and a red for Minotaur Shaman at uncommon. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, it gets +2/+0 till the end of turn. And you can pay 2, sacrifice another creature or enchantment, and it gains first strike until the end of turn. Wow. When I first looked at this, I was a little underwhelmed, but then I got to that second part of the text, and this thing just blew me away. Obviously, this is sort of the linchpin to bring the Black-Red Aristocrat Sacrifice-esque deck together. You obviously want to be activating its own ability as opposed to other abilities of your creatures that can do the same thing. Unless the board is pretty clear, and at that point you really don't care who's doing the sacrificing as long as you are sacking to something, because Mogis obviously demands his tribute, and his Slaughter Priest will absolutely deliver for him. Solid 2.5. Maybe more so than the blue-red tempo deck. I am super excited to be able to draft and play Black-Red Aristocrats in this format. It's not often that they push an archetype like this that is relatively complex on what I consider the limited scale. It's to the point where it's just so upfront in your face. Very, very cool card indeed. Next up, we've got Staggering Insight. Blue and a white for enchantment aura at uncommon. Enchants a creature and it gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Good stuff here. For any blue-white evasive deck, be it more of a tempo-esque deck, more of a grindy mid-range deck, this is a great way to accrue more and more card advantage, especially if you're able to block, maybe not to block, but to clear out your opponent's creatures during combat, be it tap effects or passives and esque effects. This is a pretty powerful card here. Can easily put the game out of range for your opponent to deal combat damage to you and kill you, all while you're accruing card advantage, finding the spells you need to win the game. This is really powerful stuff here. Solid 2.5. Next up, we have our last Titan, Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. 1 blue-green legendary creature, Elder Giant, mythic rare, 6/6, and of course, when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and the escape clause also matches Roxa, whatever his name was. Blue, green, exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. This one isn't as powerful as the black-green one or the black-red one was, simply because it isn't as aggressive. This one is much more minded for a big late-game sort of a ramp strategy. Being able to gain the life, draw the cards, and all that good stuff, that's a huge advantage there. And in that regard, probably does put it a bit stronger than the black-red one because of the color typing it's in. But either of those cards, honestly, both Titans are just absolutely absurd. And to pay 3 mana for this and get that kind of effect just off the first cast of it is quite powerful. The only downside is that blue and green aren't the best at getting escape going, so you might need to help this one just a little bit more than you might in black and red. But still, this is a solid 3 for me. The Titans are nuts. And next up, we've got our last gold card. Of course, it's our red-green one. This is Warden of the Chained. 1 red-green for a Minotaur Warrior at uncommon with trample, and it can't attack unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. and is a 4/4. So this is the card that really kind of pulls everybody together. That requires a creature with power 4 or greater to actually do their ability. This is probably one of the more underrepresented ones as far as I've seen in this set. Less impressed by this archetype in general. But if it does come together, this one's quite good actually. So Warden, I'm going to give a 2 for now. I really need to see this deck play out just because I don't feel there's enough cards to actually push the archetype to the level that the other ones are at. So solid 2. So let's switch it up, scroll back to the top, and kick off our artifacts. We have Altar of the Pantheon. 3 generic mana for an artifact at common. Your devotion to each color and each combination of colors is increased by 1. Get out your side rules and your abacuses, boys and girls. We're doing maths, which is oddly appropriate because we're in ancient Greece and they invented maths. Anyway, you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, and if you control a god, a demigod, or a legendary enchantment, you gain 1 life. So, in the event that you find yourself waffling between 3 colors of your draft pool and you have a couple of these, I can certainly say it's defensible to maybe splash 1 or 2 cards. I'm not saying go all in. This isn't some ridiculous War of the Spark 5-color draft deck. Alex, don't do it. You might try, but don't. Simply because there's not much of a payoff of going into, 3+ colors when you have a set like Theros that wants to have devotion be just a very key focal point. So just think of this as acceleration. Like I said, if you do have a splash card, this might facilitate it. But I'm not really looking to play a whole bunch of these. This is a 1.5 for me. Next up, we've got the Bronze Sword. 1 generic mana, artifact equipment, common, gives the equipped creature +2/+0 and equips for 3. All equipment is limited. Limited is trash. Moving on to the Entrancing Lyre. 3 generic mana for an uncommon artifact. You may choose not to untap it during your untap step. Pay X and tap it to tap target creature with power X or less, and it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as Entrancing Lyre remains tapped. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah, just the ability to scale up your removal. We had a Spinning Wheel and Thornville Drain that was quite powerful, and I think this is a very similar effect to it. Just maybe drafting a couple of these is going to be a really good way to just keep the board under control as you draw extra removal. You can start to untap these things, kill the original creature it was locking down, lock down the other creature at that point. There's some really cool stuff going on with this one, I think, and a more mid-rangey, probably more controlling deck, blue-white, blue-black, will probably make better advantage of this. But pretty cool stuff here. This is a solid 2 just because it can get quite expensive to actually activate that ability. Next up, we've got Mirror Shield. 2 generic mana gets you an artifact equipment. At uncommon, the equipped creature gets +0/+2 and hexproof, and whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. Equips for 2. Again, all equipment in limited is trash. This one gives hexproof. Sure, still trash. Moving right along to a legendary artifact, the Nyx Lotus. I like lotuses. 4 generic mana for a legendary artifact at rare, enters battlefield tapped, and you may choose a color and added amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. This is pretty cool. I like a good devotion payoff here. Whether or not you're using that mana to ramp into something huge is kind of extra at that point, just because there aren't a whole lot of what I would consider to be massive payoff cards really in the colors. Possibly the interventions if you're going to go something to that direction. So this is probably going to be at its best in a green, blue, green, black-esque deck. Not really any other colors will really want an artifact that can do something like this, and the fact that it comes into play tapped is a bit underwhelming. Still, there's a lot of power behind this card when it all comes together, so this is a solid 2 for me, but of course, UDH kids, you know what's up. Next up, we've got the Shadow Spear, a single generic mana legendary artifact equipment at rare. A creature gets +1/+1, it has trample and lifelink. Pay a generic mana, and permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Equips for 2. Alright. This is the only time I will say that all artifact equipment in Limited is terrible. This is one of their very few exceptions because it is so cheap to cast, it's cheap to equip, and is the stone cold nuts against gods. This, of course, is the weapon that Elspeth pulled literally out of her nightmares when Ashiok was sort of mentally torturing her. When she sort of pulled this out, this is sort of the evil, mirror of Heliod's spear, which is called Kephios, I think. Don't know, don't care. This is a cool card. This is a solid 2 here, obviously. The ability to give Hex to remove the Hex weapon and indestructible is sort of, extra at that point. But Trample and Lifelink is actually pretty powerful here. So wouldn't be embarrassed to play this card. It is a solid 2. And of course, if you do get to fire off that extra ability on there, send me a picture of it and I'll send you 100,000 EOT Newsflash Buckaroos, which of course have 0 monetary value. Moving right along. We've got ourselves a Soul Guide Lantern. 1 generic mana gets you an artifact at uncommon. As it enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. You can tap it and sacrifice it and exile each opponent's graveyard, or pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice Soul Guide Lantern, and draw a card. I don't quite understand why they just couldn't make a Relic of Progenitus. Is that just too good for Limited? Because that card's common, but whatever. I suppose if your opponent is playing a heavy escape type deck, this does have a bit of utility against it, and as such, this is relegated to simply the sideboard, but once you do bring it in, this will occasionally overperform for you. And next up, we've got the Thaumaturge. God, I hate this word. Thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is familiar. There we go. 3 generic mana, artifact bird, common, 1/3, flying, scries when it ETBs. Cool. This isn't all that impressive, honestly. There are better flyers in this set, and yeah, 1.5, barely playable. Next up, we've got the Thundering Chariot, our one and only vehicle in this set. I like these one-off vehicles per set. It's pretty cool, actually. 4 generic mana for a 3/3 artifact vehicle at uncommon, first strike, trample, and haste, and it crews for 1. Holy crap. So this thing's actually pretty good, I have to admit. All of those little satyrs running around that can't block all of a sudden become actually useful. The only, it's a freaking hill giant with upside. Like, this thing's pretty nuts, actually. Solid 2.5. And just the ability to put smaller creatures into it and just go ham with it. Pretty cool stuff. 2.5. Next up, we have got a returning favorite. This is originally printed back all the way in either Innistrad or Dark Ascension. I can't remember which one. But in any case, this is Traveler's Amulet. 1 generic mana for an artifact common. Pay 1, sacrifice it, and search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So again, if you do happen to have, a one-off pip in your deck and don't really have any other way to, fix your mana to play it, this is certainly a viable option for doing that. I wouldn't go crazy, like I said, on some kind of 3+ color deck. Don't do that. But this is certainly a decent way to make sure that you're hitting the land drops for the cards that you are playing. This is a 1.5, only necessitated when you absolutely have to have splash cards in here, but I don't think it's going to be all that common that you end up doing that. Next up, we've got the Wings of Hubris. For as bad of a card that this is super flavorful. I mean, just Icarus on a card, for crying out loud. 2 generic mana, artifact equipment, common. The equipped creature has flying, and you can sacrifice it, and the equipped creature can't be blocked this turn, and then you sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end steps, because, Icarus put the wings on, flew too close to the sun, and, well, you know what happens when you fly too close to the sun. You burn and die. Yeah, this card is pretty much crap as well. So, enough said there. Let's finish this up, everybody. Let's move on to our lands, which is, as always, surprisingly easy and quick. First up, we have Field of Ruin. Land uncommon, taps for generic mana. You can pay 2, tap it, sacrifice Field of Ruin, and destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Each player searches their library for a basic land card, puts it on the battlefield, then shuffles their library. I'm going to go out on a limb here. And I'm going to say that Wizards did not intend to have to ban Field of the Dead from Standard. I don't think they anticipated the power of Golos. I don't think they anticipated the power of any of that, honestly. And they figured that there would be enough time between the original printing of it in Ixalan and now that things wouldn't go completely tits up. Obviously, they were wrong. And this, I think, should be a card that should always be in Standard. You know, put it however many sets it needs to be in so that as soon as rotation hits, this always exists just in case. Just in case. For our purposes, though, for Limited, do not play this because there really aren't any lands that are worth blowing up, and you certainly don't want to help fix your opponent's mana either. So keep this one for Standard, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, whatever have you. Art's hella pretty, though. Next up, we've got the Labyrinth of Skophos. Land rare. Why it's not legendary is beyond me, because whatever. Tap it to add a generic mana, and you can pay 4 and tap it and remove target attacking or blocking creature from combat. So this might be the only reason to play Field of Ruin, but bring it in if your opponent actually has this. So this is what combos with that Maze Warden guy that lets things fight when you activate this ability. This by itself is super playable, even without the Maze Warden guy. We've seen this effect before. It's Mystifying Maze, which was sort of a callback to Mazavith, and just having the ability to remove creatures from combat is absolutely insane, and it's a relatively low investment here as well. This might not be a first pick, but I can definitely see this being played in any seal deck. You know, obviously we're not really stretching our mana too far in this case, so pretty powerful stuff here. Good for any control deck that wants to go in the late game and constantly keep a big threat out of the way. Beyond that, it's probably a solid 2 here, maybe a 1.5, just kind of really depending on the context of your deck and whether or not you can afford to keep this kind of mana constantly up, because this is 5 mana to invest just to activate that ability. Powerful, but pricey. Next up, we've got the easy stuff. We have the return of our Temple Cycle. So if you've been playing since M20, or even earlier than that, you will recognize that these are the allied colored temples. We got the enemy colored ones in M20, and here we are finishing out the cycle because Wizards loves cycle completion. So these are all, we have a red-green, a blue-black, a blue-white, a red-black, and a white-green one. They all come into play tapped, they scry on the end of the battlefield, and they tap to add one color or the other of their identity. These are all perfectly playable. These are solid 2s across the board. Depending on how fast this one actually ends up being, I could say that maybe you end up in a black-green deck. You could still play Temple of Abandon here just as a tapped forest, but also to gain some incremental scry advantage as well. So just keep that in mind. Perfectly playable. You'll need these for Standard. You'll need these for EDH. Lands that are printed like this will always be good for your collections. Good stuff here. Solid 2. So there's the green-red one, there's the blue-black one, there's the blue-white one, there's the black-red one, there's the green-white one, and here is our last card in the set we have to talk about. This is Unknown Shores. Common land, taps for a generic colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Never, ever, 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 ever play this card in Limited. There are better ways to facilitate a splash. Even playing just a basic land will do it for you. We've seen this card many, many times before. I've never actually seen it be needed to play. In fact, I've only ever played this card once, and it was in Standard trying to play a 4-color deck. Ask me about that later sometime. Yeah, so don't play this one. Flat out 0. And of course, we do want to draw some attention to these hella pretty basic full art lands. Wow. Just wow. I mean, you know Wizards has got something special on their hands when they break out the full art lands. You know, Zendikar needed them. Yeah, because that's what you do there. But here, these are just awesome. So, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We did it. I did it. My voice is still quite intact, and it's only 9 o'clock here. Crushed the rest of the set review, and I do hope you have enjoyed watching every bit of it. I hope you are enlightened for your pre-release this weekend, because I know it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing in the single and the two-headed giant one this week with my girlfriend. Cannot wait to throw down with all of these crazy enchantment creatures, play some aristocrats, play some blue-red tempo. Who knows what's going to go down? I'm super excited. Of course, thank you so much for watching. If you've been enjoying what we're doing here at the EOT Newsflash, please consider liking and subscribing and ringing that little bell icon, which is somewhere over here, I think, to let you know that when new content goes live as well. You can find us over on Facebook. Just look for the EOT Newsflash, and over on Twitter at EOT Newsflash. And of course, share the videos if you're enjoying them. It really lets us know that you are enjoying our content. So that does it for me for this week. We'll be back next week with our sort of pre-release recap. We'll have some talk about all the other things that are going on in Magic. There's a lot going down right now, and I can't wait to go into it. So until then, thank you again for watching. Have a great night.